Let's talk about how the internet is different than reality. I have been observing the way people interact with each other is different online than reality. And I want to look at the top 3 things that I perceive as being different. Whereas if you acted that way in real life, it wouldn't work the way it, quote, works online. Now, just to catch up to speed, one of the theories I came up with recently on my channel here is I explained why I don't watch the news and why I don't scroll social media feeds. And that's because ultimately we are to believe that news is actually news that matters, and it's not. News is either fear, they're selling fear, they're promoting gossip, or it's just some kind of agenda. Whether it's Fox News or CNN or even social media, it's fear, it's gossip, or it's some kind of agenda. So I unplugged a long time ago. I don't watch the news. I don't know what's going on, and I'm happier not knowing that. And I think because of that, it helped me realize I like myself better in real life than online, leaving some kind of comment on Facebook like I would years ago. So, and it's funny because I used to run the blog, the daddy blog for Parents Magazine. Yes, the Parents Magazine in New York City. I ran it for like 4 years. And so, as a third party, they had me promoted as the daddy blogger. And just by default, they kind of throw you in the mix and they'd highlight certain blog posts. And a lot of times it kind of made me look like an idiot. Other times it made me look argumentative. And maybe I was less mature at that point in my life. But that's something I can look at now that I realize, yeah, things are different in reality. So let me look through them. For one, it's that it seems that online, if you argue, that somehow gives you more credibility. If you leave some kind of aggressive comment on Twitter, then that means an article may quote you as an actual source. Like just some person on Twitter, like suddenly they're a source now. Like that tells you how illegitimate the news is, right? So if you disagree, then it raises your credibility somehow. That makes you more interesting, okay? And then also, I'd say similar, not only but disagreeing, but just in general, not having a middle of the road perspective on anything. So not only do you need to disagree, but fundamentally you need to be one side or the other. You need to basically have a perspective that's going to be divisive. If you have a divisive view and you like to argue about it, then that makes you somehow more credible on the internet. And then lastly, it's a focus on bringing attention to yourself instead of other people. So that's what I've noticed about online. That it's like, hey everybody, look at me because I disagree with everybody because I have a radical opinion that's not like half the other people. But just imagine if in real life, that's how you lived your life. Because that's not reality at all for me. Like I'm the opposite in all those things. So when I interact with human beings in real life, okay, so let's just dissect the obvious, the opposite of these. Okay, so I am not wishing to argue with anyone. Instead, I'm looking to agree with people. I'm like, what can I agree with that person on? What can I say, you're right, I agree? Because when you agree with people, it makes people like you. So that's a little secret there. But yeah, it's true. So I don't want to argue or disagree. I want to agree with people. And likewise, I'm not very one-sided. I try to remain as neutral and central as possible on most things because it makes me be able to be more relative to other people and it makes it easier for me to agree with them. Because if I'm not one side or the other, while I definitely disagree on some things, there's parts of what they believe that I agree on, so I focus on those that I agree with them on that. So I am agreeing with people instead of disagreeing with people. I am actually don't have some major allegiance to one side. I just remain in the middle so that I become more relevant. And ultimately, I'm focusing on bringing attention to other people, not myself, because it's not about me, it's about other people. It's the irony of people want to seem and feel important, but that desire to be seen as important makes them invisible. Now, there are those of us who realize that about most people in the world, knowing that really you can size most people up to either they want pity or they want praise. And you figure that out and you feed into that and you sympathize with them. Oh, wow, that's so horrible that you had to go through that. Or, wow, you got that, you were able to do that? I would never be able to do that. Pity or praise, that's really what it comes down to. But it's so funny how opposite reality is versus the internet. Like how you treat people, or at least should treat people in reality, versus the internet is completely opposite. But on the internet, you are praised, you are exalted if you argue with people and you have a differing view and you try to bring attention to yourself instead of the opposite, which is bringing attention to other people, making them feel better about themselves by agreeing with them and finding ways to agree with them. Complete opposite. I think that's interesting. Do you think that's interesting? If you do, tell me more about it right here.